I am an extreme sports enthusiast who loves surfing and paragliding. I have always dreamed of reaching a real paragliding paradise and enjoying the beauty and excitement there. In 2016, my dream finally came true when I arrived in Nepal. The country is known for its stunning paragliding terrain, so I was really looking forward to this trip. Nepal has magnificent natural landscapes and some of the highest mountains in the world. After a day of rest, I was ready to go to the paragliding base to complete my challenge. The next morning, we took a bus to the paragliding base in the mountains. In the car, I met a few friends who love extreme sports as much as I do, and we exchanged our experiences and lessons learned. As the car got closer to the top of the mountain, I saw the spectacular mountains and the stunning natural scenery. Eventually, we reached the paragliding base at the top of the mountain. The atmosphere here was very lively, with people wearing all kinds of sports equipment, some preparing for paragliding, and some chatting and exchanging ideas. I felt very excited and thrilled because I knew that I was about to fulfill my dream, challenge my limits and enjoy the excitement and thrill of paragliding. After the manager checked my paragliding certificate, he arranged for me to go to the nearest takeoff point. Soon, I was flying in the sky. I was surrounded by spectacular snow-capped mountains and stunning natural scenery, which gave me a great sense of satisfaction. During my flight, I suddenly felt an undercurrent hit me, which made my paraglider start to become uncontrollable. This made my heart beat faster. The management told me over the intercom that I had to get back on land as soon as possible. I started to descend fast and the paraglider became more and more unstable. I felt very scared because I knew how serious it was. As I approached the ground, my paraglider started to tangle together. I tried to deploy the paraglider, but it was still out of control. I impacted on the ground. The moment I landed, I felt a violent wave of dizziness, and then I lost consciousness. When I woke up again, I found myself in an ambulance, surrounded by the strong smell of sterilization. My breathing had become extremely difficult and I was still coughing, even with a trace of blood. I knew that the situation had become very serious. In the ambulance, I tried to sit up, but the severe pain forced me to give up. I began to feel scared and wondered how serious my injuries really were. The paramedics kept asking me about my condition, but I could only barely answer them. My head was getting dizzy, and slowly I lost consciousness again. It was as if I was floating in endless darkness. I saw my own body. It was lying in the ambulance, its body trembling violently, as if it was under some great pressure. I felt like I was leaving the world and slowly began to lose my sense of reality. I felt an invisible force, as if it was trying to pluck my soul out of my body. In the process, my mind became unusually clear, as if I possessed an intelligence beyond human comprehension. Suddenly, I felt a powerful force, as if it was going to suck me in. In the next second, I found myself in the middle of a beautiful and mysterious scene. Majestic buildings and stunning natural scenery appeared around me, which left me in awe. The buildings were decorated with ornate carvings and beautiful arches, exuding an ancient and solemn aura. Around the building stretched a lush forest, where trees and flowers of various shapes and sizes grew. On the branches of the trees also rested some birds, which sang happily, filling the whole scene with vitality and vigor. I couldn't believe that everything in front of me was real. I walked toward the spectacular building. There were some small gardens and sculptures along the road, which made the place more vivid and interesting. I also met a group of children, who were playing. When they saw me, they greeted me together. They spoke a language I didn't quite understand. Like a very old language. Although I didn't understand much, I could feel their friendliness. They also took my hand and showed me around the small village. I found the place very clean and tidy, and the villagers were very friendly and made me feel very comfortable and at ease. Finally, I said goodbye to them and continued my own journey. Finally, I arrived at the front of the building. It was a huge and magnificent building that looked ancient and mysterious. There were so many gorgeous carvings and patterns on the building that I felt as if I was in a fantasy world. I gazed at it and a strong curiosity came over me. I wanted to know what it was like inside. An old man dressed in ancient costume appeared in front of me. With a friendly smile on his face, he greeted me and asked if I needed help. I was a little surprised because I didn't know this old man. I answered his question politely anyway. The old man told me that the building was a library. There were many mysterious books inside. He invited me to enter the library with him. When I stepped inside this library, I was blown away by the sight before me. There were so many books inside that I couldn't count them. The books were neatly arranged on huge bookshelves. There were many people here, most of them reading or researching intently. They were all dressed in vintage clothes, which suited the atmosphere of the place perfectly. Some were sitting silently at their tables, studying intently. Others were exchanging their findings or sharing their experiences of reading books. I asked the old man next to me, "Can I read these books?" The old man smiled and replied, "Of course you can." I followed up by asking what the content of these books was. The old man pondered for a moment and then told me that each book represented a person's life. Some people's lives are full of adventure and excitement, and the book about them is like a novel full of adventure stories. Some people love food, and their books are more like a food guide. Others lead ordinary lives, and their books are more like a boring novel. After hearing the old man's explanation, my curiosity became stronger. I walked over to the bookshelf and a heavy book caught my attention. The book was about the life journey of a single mother. This woman was born into a not-so-happy family. Abandoned by her parents at a young age. At the age of 7, she was adopted by her current adoptive parents. The love of her adoptive parents made her feel the warmth of a family again. She studied hard as a child and won a scholarship. In college, she met her first boyfriend and they were in love for 2 years. But eventually, the relationship broke up due to discord, leaving the girl very sad. In order to escape the pain, she began to smoke and drink, and this state of life lasted for a long time. When she was 26, she met a colleague at work, and the two fell in love and got married. Soon, they welcomed their children and the woman began to enjoy the happiness of a family. But when she was 30, her husband fell in love with another woman, which eventually led to their divorce. The woman completely lost faith in love and began to become withdrawn and apathetic. However, she did not give up on life. She put more energy into her career and her children. She lived a happy life in her later years. She died at the age of 81. She became strong after experiencing adversity and appreciated her life more. Although it did not work out in her relationship, she was a very qualified mother. I was very emotional when I finished reading this book. This woman has gone through so many trials and tribulations in her life, but she has learned from each adversity and made herself stronger. This book gave me a lot of insight. I realized that in life, we need to face setbacks bravely and that every setback is an opportunity to grow. As I read this book, I felt like I was in the world of that single mother, experiencing her life together with her. Each experience touched my heart deeply. When I read that she was abandoned by her parents, I felt her helplessness and loneliness. When she felt the warmth of her family again, I also felt a warm current rushing into my heart. This feeling made me feel very wonderful, as if I really became the woman in the book, going through all the emotions and experiences with her. I was attracted to the other book on my left. Because compared to the other book, this book is very thin. The boy was born in a bad family. His father was a very irritable man who often beat him and his mother. This made the boy eccentric and withdrawn from childhood. He was not good at socializing and always stayed in a corner by himself. The boy came out to work early, but it was hard for him to fit in with the team because he would not deal with the people around him. He always did things alone and did not communicate with others, which made his colleagues think he was strange. As time went on, the boy's work performance became worse and worse, and he became more and more depressed. He became addicted to banned substances, which became his only support. He felt he could no longer stand the feeling of loneliness and helplessness. So, he ended his life at the age of 26. After reading this story, my heart aches for this boy. He had a very unhappy upbringing and family, suffering violence and beatings from his father, which made him withdrawn and poorly socialized. Everyone's life is different, and therefore everyone's book will be different. This book will be forever in the library of heaven for all to study and learn from. What is in these books depends entirely on each person's experience and choices. We should be brave enough to do what we want to do and not leave ourselves with regrets. There are so many things in this world that are worth exploring and experiencing. If we don't try, we may miss a lot of wonderful things. Let's cherish every opportunity to make our lives more interesting and fulfilling. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying in a hospital bed. This experience also changed my life completely. I realized that the most important things in this world are not wealth, status or fame. Rather, it is the things that really make people feel warm and happy. These are the things that we should pursue the most. I know what I want to do, what direction I want to move in, and to become a more life-loving person.
I suffer from severe depression. I faced enormous challenges every day. I often feel heavy inside and lose interest and enthusiasm for life. When I think back to the mistakes I made in the past, my heart is filled with self-blame and shame. I even feel that I don't deserve to be loved and respected. These negative emotions and thoughts were like an invisible net that trapped me. I was also very worried that something bad would happen in the future, and this worry made me feel extremely nervous and anxious. I would imagine all kinds of bad things over and over again. I worried that I wouldn't be able to cope with the challenges and stresses of the future and that I would be crushed by life. This fear and worry made me feel very helpless, as if I had lost control of my life. I often asked God, why did He abandon me? I didn't know why I was in such a predicament. I prayed to God often. I hoped that He would hear my heart and help me out of my pain, but none of my prayers seemed to be answered. It was as if I had been abandoned. I asked myself, why doesn't God answer my prayers? Don't I deserve to be loved and saved? My ex-husband and I have been divorced for 2 years now, and I have custody of my son. My ex-husband did not do his part either. He did not pay the support on time. My financial situation is getting worse and worse. This has made every aspect of my life more difficult. I had to cover all of my son's expenses by myself. I often felt desperate internally because I didn't know how to solve this problem. I tried to find a better job to improve my income, but my abilities were limited and I had a hard time finding a job that suited me. In such an environment, my mental condition gradually deteriorated. These emotions in turn further affected my work and life. Since God had no way to help me, I would end it all by myself. One night, my son was already asleep. I went to the living room and took all the sleeping pills in the house. Then I lay down on the couch. After a while, I felt myself fall off the couch. I fell into a red cave. It was very eerie, and there were strange creatures everywhere. I didn't know what to do, I could only stand frozen in place. These strange creatures were approaching me. They looked very scary. The skin of these creatures showed an unnatural color. Their eyes were very large and their mouths showed sharp teeth. I started to run away, but these creatures kept running after me. When I was caught by the demons, I fought desperately, but there were just too many of them. They dragged me deeper into a cave. Finally, I was put into a cage. I could see the demons outside torturing the others. Some were hanging in the air, their bodies tightly bound by chains. The demon kept beating these people with a whip, and each whipping was accompanied by their screams. Some other people were tied to iron bars, and under their feet was a huge furnace. I could feel the heat of the furnace fire and hear their screams. The demons looked very cruel, and they seemed to enjoy the pain of these people. I didn't know how to help these people. I knew that if I went near them, I would probably be tortured in the same way. When the demons suddenly appeared in front of my cage, I felt a strong wave of fear. I knew they were going to start torturing me. The demons dragged me out in a rough way, and I was thrown on the ground. They dragged me to a pillar and prepared to tie me to it with ropes. I did not give up. I broke free of their grip when they weren't looking. I rushed toward the exit of the cave. I heard the demons shouting behind me. Their footsteps were getting closer and closer, and I knew I had to get out of here as soon as possible. I saw the exit of the cave. Suddenly, a huge demon appeared at the entrance of the cave and blocked the exit directly. I knew this demon was Satan. He was the ugliest demon I had ever seen. He had a pair of sharp, pointed horns. There were many scales like fish scales. And a pair of hooves. His eyes are black. He also had an aura that made people feel very evil. In this desperate moment, I suddenly remembered God. I fell to my knees and began to pray aloud to God. I asked God to save me and let him take me out of here and get rid of these demons. Satan laughed out loud with a mocking expression on his face. He looked at me and said, "There is nothing anyone can do for you here, including God." I took a deep breath and calmly replied, "I don't believe in your words, I believe that God will protect me." When Satan heard my words, his expression became more malicious. He explained, "You came here because you did not practice the teachings of God. On earth, humans are becoming more and more selfish. They have become indifferent and no longer care about the people and things around them. This selfish behavior is against God's will. On the last judgment day, only those who have practiced the doctrine will enter heaven, while others will be banished to hell. Now, at least half of the people on earth will stay in hell, because their actions are not approved by God." He finished these words with a smug smile on his face. After hearing Satan's words, I was in complete despair. I had believed in God's love and grace since I was a child, but now I realized that I did not really practice his teachings. I felt that I was not entitled to God's love and could not escape the fate of hell. I looked at Satan and did not resist in the slightest, but only accepted it openly. I knew that my life had come to an end, and that both my life and my soul would sink into hell forever. Satan asked his men to push me into the furnace. As I approached the edge of the furnace, I felt despair and fear. I knew I had done many things wrong, but I never thought I would be sent to hell and suffer such punishment. I decided to make a confession at the end of my life, to admit my mistakes to God and ask for forgiveness. When I was about to fall into the lava, a bright light suddenly appeared in front of me. The dazzling light made me close my eyes. When I reopened my eyes, I found myself being pulled by a huge hand and flying away from this place. This hand felt very warm. But as I looked back into hell, I heard the angry voice of Satan. He screamed that I should stay in hell, because hell is my final destination. However, I didn't pay any attention to her words. I knew I had been forgiven by God, and that was what I really longed for. I was transported into a void. Surrounded by pure white, it brought me peace, and I also felt a strong wave of love. In front of me, a tall silhouette of a human form appeared. I knew that he was God. He stood there with an air of majesty and holiness. Although I could not see his face clearly, I could feel his love. I knelt before God because I knew I had sinned. I did not dare to look him in the face, but I knew he could hear my confession. I thanked him for taking me out of hell and giving me the opportunity to start a new life under his shelter. My confession was filled with sincerity and gratitude because I knew I had finally achieved true salvation. He said to me, "Anyone can make mistakes, son. You have accepted your sins and repented, and I will forgive you." God turned toward a white door, and he reached out to me to follow him. We passed through the white door and came into an open field. I saw white clouds all around me and a soft meadow at my feet. I looked at this sacred place with gratitude and awe in my heart. God and I had a long talk here. What struck me was the following conversation. I asked God, "Is it true what Satan says? That half of the people on earth will go to hell?" God hesitated for a moment, then whispered, "Satan is a liar, and she is just trying to make you believe these words. However, I cannot completely deny these statements, because many people have made mistakes and lost their way. Hell exists, but not everyone will go to hell. People's own actions determine their destiny. If they consistently pursue truth and goodness in their lives, they will be accepted into heaven instead of being banished to hell. I do not want to let anyone out of my arms, but human beings have free will and they decide their own destiny. I love all people, including those who have made mistakes. My love is unconditional, and I will always guide them as long as they return to the right path. I want all people to be saved if they are willing to accept my love and forgiveness." After hearing God's words, the doubts inside me were finally answered. I knew that God never wanted his children to go to destruction. He has always guided us, even though we sometimes get lost in the pursuit of materialism and power. Finally, God told me it was time to get back to reality. He reminded me to take care of my children and to persevere when things get tough. He said that although he couldn't change things, he would always be there for me. These words brought me infinite strength and confidence. My soul began to plummet, and it was as if I had entered a dark vortex. Then, I found myself back on the couch in the living room. I felt a great thirst in my throat, so I walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water to drink. I felt a pang of nausea in my stomach. I hastily bent over and vomited up most of the undigested sleeping pills in one gulp. My hands were still sweating and my heart was still beating wildly as I walked to my son's bedroom. I knew how foolish and selfish my actions had been. I almost cost my son his mother. I gently pushed the door open. He woke up to the sound of the door opening. He rubbed his sleepy eyes and called out for his mom. I felt my heart melt instantly, tears welled up in my eyes, and I took a deep breath, feeling like I had regained my life. I walked towards him and hugged him tenderly, feeling the warmth of his body heat. I knew this was the second chance God had given me. At this moment, I understood the preciousness of life and the mercy of God. I remembered God's words, to help others to the best of my ability. And I vowed to do my best to help those who needed me.